If you could look into the future, how far would you look into the future? And what would you want to know? So we're looking at the book of Acts in chapter 16. And there's Paul and there's Timothy and there's Silas, and they're on this journey and they're going around preaching the gospel. They're sharing the good news. And they have to decide where they're going to go. And so they make some decisions about what they're going to do with their future. But the Holy Spirit says, nah, not there, not there, and directs them. So they're obviously listening to what God would say. And so they go to some different places and end up maybe in a different place than they thought they would. And I think that's true of us too. We often think of the future. We think of, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And we end up in different places than we actually thought we would. And we see how in the midst of it, God works through it all. In this story, there's a few things that you might not notice, but are really important. You see, they ended up going to Troas. And in Troas, if you watch the language, the book of Acts up until this point is talking about they, talking about Paul and Silas, talking about Timothy, all referring to them as they. But then when they go to Troas, it starts saying we. And the reason is, that's where Luke picks up the story. Now, Luke is the writer of Acts and the book of Luke as well. And so it's in this point where he picks up the story. So if this didn't happen, we might not even have the book of Acts. And not just that book, but also we see this Macedonian call. We see this call where they're invited to come and preach in Macedonia. Well, do you know what is in that region in Macedonia? It's Philippi and Thessalonica. And you might recognize those words because the book of Philippians and the first and second book of Thessalonians come from those places because Paul and Silas and Timothy went to preach there, and then churches developed and grew, and then they were writing letters to those places. So we wouldn't even have those letters if they weren't responsive to the Holy Spirit leading them and giving their future over to God. And so what I think this tells us is we can make plans. That's great. We can say, hey, I'm going to do this in the future. But ultimately, we need to be listening to what God's Spirit is saying to us. We need to spend time actually reading the scriptures and praying, and even in silence and going, God, what are you saying to me? What am I to do with my life today and right now? Because He's the only one who could see the future. He stands outside of time in eternity, and He can see what's going to happen. And so the best person to tell you what to do with your future is God Himself.